it was really difficult for the children because they really missed him, even though they kind of understood. Well, after being at my sister's a while, I'm the friend who recommended her church to me, and I'd been a Christian for some time. I'd become a Christian back in 2001, I think, in Derby, so I'd been baptised and everything. And during that time, Paul, he'd come to church, but he wasn't really involved at all. My friend, like I said, she lived in the area and she invited me to the church. At that point, Paul wasn't living with us. I was still living at my sister's, and so I decided to go, and I really enjoyed the church. The following week, my sister came, and eventually we ended up becoming a part of the church.
I was at that time quite not disappointed, but a bit kind of anxious about you becoming a Christian, because I thought there's no way she's going to be coming back to me now. Yeah, but starting going to the church and everything.
To that church, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that's it. I've lost her now. She's going to become more religious on me and get all like serious and start just judging me for everything that I do. And I thought there's no way on God's earth she's ever going to get back to me now, because I was getting involved with the church, and all these different things were going on in my head about how the church is going to change her, and she's become quite stern and quite serious, and she was already a serious person, and I just thought it was just going to make her a lot more kind of determined that I was a man. And I used to say to me, she's going to think I'm a man, just a big disease walking around. I'm going to have this unforgiveness towards me and become quite serious person, and everything that I enjoyed with Marie was all just going to go to pots, because she was going to become this hat wearing person, and every time she's going to be like Bible bashing me, and all these different things were going on in my head at the time, how it's going to change her. But it didn't happen that way. So yeah.
So moving on then, what happened was, I remember my sister, she was quite involved with the church, and she decided to put on like a women's conference over a weekend, and in that conference she wanted me to give my testimony on where I'd been with the children for how long, and how God had worked everything out for us, because by that time I'd actually become a lot more involved in the church and had a role within the church as well. And at first I said to her, there's absolutely no way, there's no way that I'm going to stand up on the stage and tell people about where I've been. I'm in a completely new place now, fresh start, nobody needs to know where I've come from or and my sister was really trying to encourage me and to think of it along the lines of that think about what God's done for you and where He's brought you from and where He's bringing you to, and it'll be a testimony for other people. And I was just like, no way, I ain't doing it. And it took me quite a while. I thought about it, and I thought about how in the position that I was in at the time, I felt that because I've built up such a relationship with God, obviously being in the refuge, I kind of felt that, what, Lord, okay, if this is my way of giving you something back for keeping me, for looking after my children, I'll do it. And so I went to my sister and I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And she was like, what? I said, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this for God. I'm going to do it. So it was all set up. She did like an interview kind of chat then on the stage, and asked me, posed the questions about where I've been, and I told her, and I just remember looking at the women's faces and they were all just like gobsmacked, like really, like what? And I literally felt naked on the stage. I felt exposed, like I'd told all. I'd built up this picture of who I was. And when the truth was revealed, I could just see that people were just in shock. At the time, Paul was down and he was looking after the children at a friend of mine's home. And there were a couple, let's call them David and Sally. Should we call them David and Sally? Yeah, we'll call them David and Sally. So anyway.
What about Julie and John?
Okay, we'll call them Julie and John.
Okay.
So he was looking after them at Julie and John's house, and Julie's mother was a part of the church, and but from another branch, and this meeting had been going on for 3 days, and she came in on the Friday, and what happened was when she arrived in the town of the church, and she stopped at a chip shop, and in the chip shop was a young man, and she said that God had told her that she needed to speak to this young man, but she couldn't do it. He was a stranger. There was no way she couldn't do it.
It makes me sound like I'm always in chip shops all the time. You met me near a chip shop.
Shh, giving it all away.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Let's tell the
Yeah, go
story.
on.
And so she decided she wanted to talk to the guy, but she just couldn't do it, and she got back in her car and left. But she felt really awful and awkward that she felt that God had told her to do something and she didn't follow it through. Anyway, Paul was at Sally and, what do we call them? Jane and John's house, looking after our children, and this lady was Jane's mum. I think I called her Jane. Julie's mum. And so, sorry.
Friends.
Okay, and so on that day that Paul was looking after the children at their house, the lady had left the meeting that I'd given my testimony at and gone back to
The daughter's house.
Yeah, and saw Paul, and she was absolutely shocked. She said, "Who knows? Who is this guy? Who is this guy?" And James, the son-in-law, said, "It's Paul." And she said, "Oh my goodness, were you in a chip shop yesterday?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "I saw you and God told me that I needed to speak to you." She said, "I don't know you obviously, but you are like the baby Moses that was put in a basket and sent away by the mother." She says, "Is this making any sense to you?" She says, "Because there's a Jezebel spirit that's been chasing you for a very long time." And with that, Paul was like, "Well, yeah, it kind of makes sense because I was brought up in care." And she said, "There has been something that has been over you for a very long time and the curse needs to be broken." So this all gets a bit deep and I don't really want to go too far into it, but when Paul later on told me about that, we had to get in contact with the lady because she didn't realise actually that I was the wife of the guy that she was talking to. And so for us, it just showed us how God was working in the background in our marriage, and that he had us on his heart. And so anyway, after that, there was a Sunday that Paul came to the church. Very reluctantly, because again, he'd had the children and
can I say, up until this point that I was going to come to church, I already made my mind up that because when I found out Marie was going to this church, there used to be times I used to go in there and try and get Marie's attention, and she didn't want to know, and I would sit behind her and try and make comments to her, and she just kind of ignored me blankly. And I also used to think, well, that's a good Christian spirit, obviously in the right place. What about loving everybody and thinking, well, she's going to become a Christian, she's going to have to love me regardless, because the Bible tells us she got to love me regardless, because it says God is a friend of sinners, and if I was this big sinner, Marie's got to love me, and that's how I thought it was going to pan out. But I already made my mind up before I decided to go to church that Sunday, that I wanted it in my life anyway. I had it all planned out what I was going to do, because if Marie didn't want me and I was a letdown to my children, I did think, well, what's the point of kind of being around and living? And I already decided, I just thought, well, I'm going to be going back down on the M4 and I'm just going to get my car and swerve it off the road and it may sound horrible, but that's what I wanted to do. So when I came to church that Sunday, my older daughter from Birmingham, she came, and I sat with Marie and her nieces and some of her nephews, and my three daughters sat there as well. And me personally, I didn't really think much of the service. I just thought, what the hell, I don't want to be in here, because I could tell you another story about the history of me in church, and what made me resent the church. And even though I still love God, I had a kind of a funny relationship. I didn't want to serve him, but I still loved him, kind of thing. So it was a bit of an odd thing. But I hated church, put it that way. I just resented going to in any form of church whatsoever. I just resented it completely. But yeah, I remember sitting there and just listening to the singing. Yeah, the singing was kind of nice, and I did get a few tears, but I had to put on this image that regardless, I ain't going to become a Christian. I'm not going to give my life to the Lord. I want nothing to do with church. I just want my wife back. I want my kids. That's all I was interested in at that time. And anyway, Marie was there, and the pastor was giving this sermon, and all the way through the sermon I was sat there just chewing my gum, just thinking, please be over, please be over, please be over. I just want to go. I don't want to get in my car, and I just want to go and kill myself. That's all I wanted to do. Camera. But anyway, pastor was doing an altar call, and he asked for people to come up for prayer, obviously for different reasons, and he just kept on going about, I can't finish service because there's somebody here who needs to what is it, deliverance or something along those lines, anyway. And I just remember he kept on going on and on and on. By then I knew it was me he was talking to, because I kind of felt this presence, a presence that I've never felt before. Almost like I wanted to get up and leave the church, and I wanted to go, but my whole body was fixed to this chair. Now I'm not a small guy, and if I wanted to get up, and anyone who wanted to stop me, I would have literally fought with them. I would have been wrestling on the floor with them. You're not keeping me in church. I'm going. I want to leave this church. I could not literally move. My body was literally stuck to the chair, and I was shaking like a leaf. And pastor kept saying, right, I can't finish church yet, this guy has to come up. Well, he didn't actually say a guy, did he? He said, this person has to come up. And I remember there was a group of men behind me, and he said, look, I'm going to actually say where the person's sitting at the back, and they need to come up to the front because I can't finish church. Anyway, cut a long story short, time was going, some men got up, they came to the front, about 10 men or something, and said, look, no offense, I'm going to pray for you guys, but it's not you, it's not you. And I sat there in my head, and he kept on going on and going on about it, and he said, look, I am going to make a bold move now, because normally this guy would probably fight me, but he's not. It looks like he's going to fight me, but he ain't going to fight me. And he got fed up because the person wouldn't get up, who was me, and he literally came up to where I was actually sitting. It was about 8 rows down on the right hand side. He stood on the chair, stood in front of me, and I remember him saying, "You're not going to trouble me." But in my heart, in my mind, I wanted to get up and lamp him. Excuse the expression. How dare you come up and expose me like this, and have everyone looking at me? But I could literally not move. I couldn't move. You know, whether it was angels or God or whatever, something was holding me to that chair. I literally couldn't move. And anyway, I remember I was shaking, I was crying, my kids started to cry. Actually, the chairs that I was sitting on, everyone next to me was actually shaking. I believe that was the Spirit of God just moving. And I've never been called like that before. Normally people will go up and say, yeah, you know, it's me. But I remember sitting there saying, Lord, if you want me, you're going to have to prove to me that you want me. Otherwise, I ain't moving. I ain't going nowhere. I ain't getting up to the front. I'm not going for prayer. If you want me, you're going to have to come to me. And I remember fighting with Jesus in my head, saying, no, you've got to come to me. You imagine how much love from Christ that took for him to say, actually, okay then, I'm gonna go up to this guy then. You don't wanna come to me, but I'm gonna come and get you. I'm gonna show you who I am.
Okay, so literally Paul just broke down on the minister. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. I think people in the church hadn't seen anything like it before, because it was just such a drawn out service, and it was basically all around his deliverance. And so, the minister asked, does anybody know him? My sister put her hand up. Obviously, he said, well, how are you related to him? And she turned around to me, and I was like, yeah, it's my husband. And the minister said, I don't know what it is, but I see the coming together of two forces with you guys. He said, he says, you cannot be apart. You have to be together. And I was just like thinking, no, you've got this wrong. Like, you've got this so wrong, because there is no me and him. Like, we're done. And I remember having to go and meet up with the minister, and I had then explained to him everything about where I've been and where we were as a couple and all of that. And he called me to his office sometime later because Paul had decided that he wanted to move into the town as well. And so he moved in, and then I threw you out again because there was a lot of the issues hadn't gone away. I kind of took him on a trial, and the issues had not gone away. There was another girl, and so I was just like, you know what, I'm done with this. Like, you can imagine.
It wasn't. I mean, that day when I came to church, it wasn't. There's a process between being delivered. It wasn't automatically.
No, it wasn't.
My life changed, but like even thinking about it now, kind of makes me quite tearful, because I think that day, kind of Christ coming to me, kind of thing. That's a huge thing about someone proving who God is, and it wasn't the case of that was it. I was a whole. I was a new person. It wasn't that. It wasn't like an instamatic. My life is suddenly changed. God's met me at a point of call. It was God meeting me to show me who He is, to say, I'm here, the rest is down to you. I can only come to you and kind of show you my presence and make you feel my presence. It's up to you whether you want to take that on board or not. Because remember, God don't force you to do anything. He won't force His will onto you. It's a choice. It's a changing around of your own life. It's a wanting more than God demanding, saying, right, you must. Because if you force into things, like I was forced into church when I was a child, you rebel against it and you start hating it. And that's why I hated the church, because I started to rebel, because it was a force. God was showing me, because He knows me more than anybody else. He knows my inside, my thoughts, my heart, everything. He was just showing me, since your faith is so weak and you don't believe who I say I am, I'm going to just show you my presence, make you feel my presence. The rest is going to be down to you to make that decision, whether you choose to follow me or not. I'm not going to force you. I'm just going to show you who I am, and I'm always here for you. So.
I feel emotional.
Anyway, we unfortunately have booked a table for 9 o'clock, but we're going to come back to this after we've had some refreshments, not alcohol, and something to eat, because it's 9 o'clock and I'm starving, and we have booked a table for 9. But we're going to come back to this for a short while later on in the evening. Is that all right? Yeah.